Great.
Thank you, Leanne, for that nice introduction. My idea here is to share my screen, so we know what we're up to. So let me get that going. So here we go. Share the screen, and I am going to tell you a little bit about the beginning of the San Diego chapter, as well as my memory recalls it. So this is one person's memory, with sincere apologies to any other participants that have been left out or if I've made a mistake. So this is what Ric Matthews remembers about the beginning of the San Diego chapter. The San Diego chapter actually began following the return of some local folks that had gone on a Los Angeles chapter sponsored whale watching trip in 1971. And when they came back to San Diego, they had agreed on the trip that they were interested in starting a San Diego chapter. And so they put a small ad, or I guess maybe article, into the local newspaper and announced that they were going to have an organizational meeting. My wife Brenda and I saw this article, and we went to the very original meeting, which was held at the La Jolla home of Elizabeth Allison. Elizabeth lived in the white Turkish dome style house off of La Jolla Boulevard. La Jolla Boulevard then, I think maybe La Jolla Parkway, maybe still La Jolla Boulevard nowadays. And the people that I remember being at that original meeting included Elizabeth Allison as our hostess, Hazel Sayers, who continued to be a major player in the San Diego chapter for decades, Ruth Cheney, who had a nice home on La Jolla Shores area, Al Pennis, who was, if I remember right, a science teacher at Jurabic Elementary School, and then my wife and I were, I think, the foundational members. And I can't remember whether Dr. Ray Gilmore was there at that very first meeting. I know he became involved with the San Diego chapter very soon, and I just can't remember if he was there for the beginning. So Al Pennis volunteered to be the president for the first year, and we had some meetings, and I was elected to be the new president in 1972, and I served for 4 years until through 1976, at which time I ultimately then got elected to be the founding national chair, but more about that. San Diego chapter has always enjoyed very generous support. San Diego region is a hotbed for marine mammal studies. And so throughout our almost 50-year history, I guess 50-year history really, we've had people such as Dr. Ray Gilmore, who was associated with the San Diego Natural History Museum and one of the leading authorities on gray whales, Dr. Carl Hubbs and his wife Laura at Scripps Institute of Oceanography were very generous with their time and participation. Bill Evans, National Marine Fisheries Service, gave us a lot of input and has almost been a life member until his passing. Carlo Mosca was the vice president of SeaWorld. SeaWorld, in its initial formation, was very educationally oriented and was a great supporter and participant in the development of the San Diego chapter of the American Cetacean Society. Through Carlo, we met Dr. Frank Todd, who was the vice president of birds at SeaWorld, and he had good things to say and help us with as we unfolded. Frank Powell was actually the CEO at SeaWorld, and he was generous and inclusive. Dr. Bob Pittman, National Marine Fisheries up the hill from Scripps, was there, along with some of his colleagues that I know I'm just forgetting to mention in this particular slide. We got to meet Don Wilkie. He served on our board for a while, the director of the aquarium at Scripps Institute Oceanography. And then these other names came in and out later. Steve Schwartz and Mary Lou Jones were SeaWorld employees and found ACS and got on the board and participated and went on ultimately to do some real landmark work in the gray whale field. Steve earned his doctorate degree. They've really made a name for themselves with a couple of books that they've written. Steve Leatherwood was at that time working with the Navy, taking a lot of photographs, became quite a knowledgeable individual. And unfortunately, we lost Steve at too early of a time in his young life. Dr. Sam Ridgway was always very helpful too. He was with the U.S. Navy Dolphin Program and later went on to the Marine Mammal Foundation. And then, as I said, SeaWorld was very cooperative and participatory in the early days when they were in their educational mode. We have typically had monthly meetings. In the beginning, we held those meetings at Sumner Auditorium at Scripps Institute Oceanography. We did that for at least 10 years. We tried some other venues, the auditorium at the zoo. We ran there for a while, thinking we might have better parking. People were always concerned about the parking at Sumner, a little dark after the meetings to get back out onto the street to find your car. And we've used various venues throughout our history, and we returned back to Scripps and Sumner Auditorium in 2000 when we kind of had another rebirth. We've waxed and waned throughout the years, and we've kind of come back to being functional just a little after the year 2000. ACS San Diego was the very first public whale watching in San Diego. We hired sport fishing boats that were off season during the January, February time, and we would go out once or twice a month, 3-hour local trips or all-day trips down to the Coronados. We would do that once or twice a month. Today, there are 6 to 10 whale watching companies that are operating all year long, every day that it's safe to be on the water. And so whale watching in San Diego has really blossomed over the first 50 years. In 1973, we, as a local chapter, decided that we would charter the Searcher and do our first long-range Baja 8-day trip. The naturalists on that initial trip were Steve Leatherwood and I. We were the first, our first excursion was to go into San Ignacio Lagoon, but we did that via Guadalupe Island. Guadalupe Island lies quite a distance off of the Baja coastline, and we tried it out. We were able to see fur seals and elephant seals there, but in later trips, we ultimately dropped Guadalupe Island because it takes an extra amount of time to get out there. That first trip, Steve Leatherwood and I actually encountered orcas working on elephant seals at San Benitos, and so that was pretty interesting. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. There have been lots of people that have volunteered their time to be on the board and be involved with ACS over our past 50 plus years. Like any organization, we've had our starts and stops. The rule of thumb is that 80% of the work is done by 20% of the people. So people will ultimately burn out a little bit, but it continues to go on, and we have some wonderful volunteers still shepherding the chapter forward. I thought I'd share some interesting tidbits about ACS San Diego and a couple of things that are sort of unusual about us. We received 3 letters from Lynette Squeaky Fromm. You might remember her name from as a member of the Charles Manson family. And in those letters, the first one requested one of our Whales of the World posters. Um, we were slow in getting that to her in whatever prison that she happened to be housed at. We got a nasty gram from her, short letter asking, "Where's my poster?" And then when we did finally send the poster that she had purchased with money that she had earned, I guess, in during her incarceration, the third letter that we got was her complaining about how cartoonish the real life drawings of the whales were, and that she was really looking for something that showed these whales being slaughtered. So that was kind of an interesting phenomena. Another thing was that on one of our local whale watching trips, we went out and it was a foggy day. We searched for a break in the fog, um, wandered around offshore for a while. The fog parted to make a little opening around the boat, and a gray whale surfaced a couple of times next to the boat, and the fog bank closed back up on us, and the end of our time came and went. And so we went into back to the dock, and a couple of weeks later we were served with a small claims court, and they were asking for a refund after whale watching in the fog. They didn't think that that was the right thing. The judge that presided over that particular case turned out to be a sports fisherman, and the words that I remember him uttering was that he pays to go on fishing trips and nobody guarantees him to catch fish. So you are out there. He understood what ACS was all about. Through ACS, I've been able to enjoy a couple of interesting extracurricular activities, if you would. SeaWorld, we used their boat. We used their boat to take off and go to the Coronado Islands. We had permission actually to land on the island, which is pretty rare to ever see that actually happen. And I was able to do that with Carl Hubbs. So you see Dr. Hubbs here. We're sitting in the bay of the South Island with the old casino in the background. And if memory serves me, this particular person, I think, is Frank Todd, the bird guy from SeaWorld. I also had the opportunity to be able to go whale watching on the backside of Catalina with the Goodyear blimp. I was able to take Dr. Jerry Koyman, who's in the audience tonight, been a colleague and a great influence and mentor for me. And so this picture on the left here was actually taken from the Goodyear blimp. And it really shows that baleen V-shaped blow that we often can spot. And then here's my tail flip picture from the Goodyear blimp. So watching whales from the whale in the sky was quite an interesting experience. So as I kind of conclude that particular part of my presentation and my talk about the history of our organization, I want to make sure everybody understands that we are part of a larger national organization. So around 1976, Los Angeles and San Diego and Orange County began to meet and talk about forming a national organization. And some of the people that were there were Beamy DeBus. This should have been a B. Beamy DeBus, John Olguin from the Cabrillo State in San Pedro, gosh, went blank there. And then Don Patton from the Los Angeles County of Natural History, Diane McIntyre from the San Pedro area, a man named John, I've forgotten what his last name was, but he was with San Clemente High school, I remember. And after we met a few times about sort of incorporating into becoming a national organization, I was elected to be the founding national president. We had many meetings in the southeastern part of Los Angeles or Orange County to meet and discuss the formation of this and where we wanted to take the organization. And I had the pleasure on several of those meetings to drive Dr. Ray Gilmore up. I had him all to myself, and I was able to learn a lot of very interesting background from him about his life and his study of the gray whale. So that was a real treat to be able to do that. Today we actually have the following chapters. We have a Los Angeles chapter, Orange County chapter, San Diego, Monterey Bay, Oregon, the Puget Sound, Seattle area, the San Francisco Bay area, and we have a student coalition. Leading some of these trips has been a real opportunity for me. As I mentioned, went on one of the very first ACS San Diego trips. I think I made about 5 trips with them as the naturalist. It gave me an opportunity also to do 3 trips with the Smithsonian out of Washington, D.C., one a year for 3 years. And then I also was invited to be the naturalist for Frank LaPresta when he took the Royal Polaris and had family and friends go into the lagoons on just a private trip. And on those trips, he invited my family to accompany me. And so here you see my daughter, the tall one, my daughters. The tall one is Jody, and the little one is Nicole. Nicole's here in the audience today. Sort of helped us kind of get some of the technology worked out, but they've been whale watchers all their lives. I had the opportunity to do these trips, but the first trip is always an interesting one because having never really been to any of those spots, you were supposed to be the expert. And I was fortunate that I was able to be given by Margie Stinson, again, whale trip leader, currently working at Southwestern College in Chula Vista. She gave me galley proofs to a book that I'll show you the cover of in the next slide. And out of that book, you see where we typically have made the stops. So normally a trip begins in San Diego, which is up here. It visits San Martin Island off of the coast of Ensenada. Then the next day, you typically sail down to San Benito's Islands. That's the islands where I happened to see orcas on the first trip that I did. You spend the day on that island. I'm sorry, that's not correct. Let me fix that. After Todos Santos, I got a little short there. Let me say that again. We traveled to San Benito's, which is all the way down here. I thought that was a little short of a trip. We traveled all the way down here to San Benito's Island, and that's where I had seen my first killer whales. And what we do is we spend the day on the island, hiking the island, looking at whatever is interesting, the pinnipeds. And then at night, we then traveled into either Scammons Lagoon, which would have been this way. And then we switched to going into San Ignacio Lagoon, which is going to be this way. So we would go into one of those lagoons, spend 3 days with the whales, and let's change colors here so that we can find our way back. We would come out of the lagoon. We'd make our way back to Cedros Island, spend the day on Cedros Island, sail all night up here to San Martin Island, and then make our way back, clearing customs in Ensenada, or before they made us do that, going all the way back to San Diego. So I also had the opportunity to lead a trip where flew down to Magdalena Bay, and did the trip right there, and well, flew down to Cabo San Lucas and bussed up to Magdalena Bay, and then enjoyed Cabo San Lucas after that. So that was just sort of a different format where it was not about the islands, it was just about the whales in Mag Bay. This is the book that I mentioned to you that I was very lucky to get the galley proofs, and this is really the guideline for a trip like that. This has got all kinds of information about all those islands, about the lagoons, about Baja, and it was written by Dennis Bostic. Dennis Bostic at that time was a biology teacher at Palomar College. Unfortunately, he passed away way too early. Margie Stinson kind of finished the book for him, and as I said, was very generous in sharing the galley proofs to get me started. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about my personal experiences with various marine mammals and tell you a little bit about that. And we'll start here with looking at this poster of the whales of the world. And on the left, the whales that are all going left to right, so in that direction, those are all baleen whales. So those do not have teeth. They have a fingernail-like chitin material that hangs from their gums, and they filter feed. And then the whales that are going right to left in this direction, these are all toothed whales. And so I've kind of used this whales of the world poster to organize my talk and tell you about my experiences with each of those. So let's talk about the toothed whales first. All right. And so this is what my life list looks like. And these are the whales that I can remember that I've seen. I might have seen a couple other whales, but these are certainly the ones that I remember. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about each one of these. There won't be a long story, hopefully, about each one of those. But when I went to work at the Department of Physiology in UCSD Medical School and met Jerry Koyman, I have had a couple really cool opportunities, and I don't know if Jerry remembers this, but it's as clear as though it was yesterday for me. Jerry called me the day one afternoon, and he said, "Can you go with me to up to San Francisco? They're bringing in the last 3 sperm whales that were ever whaled by the United States, and we're going to go collect tissue samples." I said, "Absolutely, I'm in." So we are in Richmond. This is Richmond, California, which is deeper in the San Francisco Bay. While Jerry and I are on the airplane, PSA, just to set the year. All right, we haven't had PSA for a while. You remember the flight attendants? Well, some of us remember the flight attendants, all right. But we flew up there, and we realized while we were on the airplane inbound to the Bay Area that we were traveling in the clothes that we were going to travel home in. No, we're doing necropsies on whales that have been dead for a couple of days. And so I think both decided that as soon as we got our rent-a-car that we were going to stop at Kmart and get a whole set of clothes. So we stopped, we got the cheapest shoes we could find, we got the cheapest pants that we could find, we got the cheapest shirt that we could find, and we got dressed and toddled off to Richmond to be able to see this boat was the whaling boat down here, and you can see the harpoon that they used to dispatch these whales. And this happened just before the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972. So in the upper right-hand corner up here, you see them actually hauling the whale up the ramp. And then here you see us beginning to do some of our biological extractions, but very definitely a sperm whale, in case you're not sure what we saw. Very definitely a sperm whale. So we played around in that muck all day long, got our samples that we needed, took a shower there, changed back into our nice clothes, left those other ones as a donation. And I think we still had looks of people looking at us when we walked through the airport to come home. But that was pretty fun. The first trip I did was with ACS San Diego, where we went to Guadalupe Island. The next stop was San Benitos Island. And after we got done walking the island and sharing elephant seals and sea lions with
the participants, we came back and the crew told us that there were orca working the bay. And we were uncomfortable about taking our passengers out, not sure what might happen. But Steve Leatherwood and I got into separate skiffs and we went out and we saw these probably Eastern Tropical Pacific, the ETPs that were just here, that group, it's probably that group, actually feeding on elephant seals. We saw them throwing elephant seals around. You see the birds all collected around to get the bits. So that was my first experience with orcas in 1973. That's kind of my favorite animal, and I've had the opportunity to see them in Juneau, Alaska, in Victoria, in the ferry going from Vancouver to Victoria, and lots of different places. And so on Christmas Day this year, just passed last month, I got invited by Gone Whale Watching to because I've done a lot of stuff with them, to go out because the Eastern Tropical Pacific whales were off San Diego. And so here you see them feeding on a common dolphin. And these are all my pictures. All the pictures are mine, unless you see some little website down at the bottom. So this is one of the Gone Whale Watching boats right here with, and I just wanted to capture that little killer whale coming up behind that. We had them wake riding on both my boat and Dominic's boat. We actually had them wake riding right up against the boat, like you've seen video from Mexico. And then we were able to get some phenomenal pictures here. This right here, where my arrow is the rebuild of White Sands retirement community in La Jolla.
Wow.
So you get an idea that we're not that far off the beach, and here they're feeding on a bottlenose dolphin, I think. So that we picked that up and we stayed with them for about 5 or 6 hours. This is my granddaughter's, the back of my granddaughter's head right there. And so she's watching this orca get up close and personal. And then this one even wants to be more personal. So this right here, wow. You know, see the hand? So we're pretty close to these orcas. All right. So a phenomenal experience. Carrying my favorite animal. So you know, there we were. Jane and I from the board, Jane is part of one of our board members. We were out one day together and we saw a Cuvier beaked whale. These are really long diving animals. So to get them at the surface was phenomenal. To get a picture of them was phenomenal. Jane actually has a better picture. I should have hit her up. But she actually has a better picture than I did. But it happened so fast. And I am such a fanatic about whales and taking pictures, but I find myself holding my camera and my mouth open as I watch the whales. And I go, oh, yeah, I should have taken a picture of that. All right. I just get distracted and, you know, whatever. I've seen common dolphin, Delphinus, and here you see up in the upper right corner, this is a stampede on Christmas Day, but I've seen this a lot of times in my life. Long beak and short beak commons that are there. Down here in the lower right-hand corner, not my picture, are Hawaiian spinner dolphins. So the family, we were in the big island of Hawaii. We were snorkeling at 3 steps, recommended by the locals. I was swimming back, look up. My wife is sitting on the rocks on the beach, and she's waving her hands, and she's just being very frantic. And I'm, you know, poking my head up out of the water, and I can see her, and I'm wondering if I got a shark behind me because she's so enthusiastic about whatever's happening. I continue to just motor over to her, and she says there's a bunch of dolphins out there. My daughter, Nicole, who's here tonight as technical support, thought that would be really fun, but Nicole doesn't like to swim in water where you can't see the bottom. So with just one little push of my foot, she found herself on a boogie board. I kicked her into the water, and I swam her out there, and we enjoyed these spinner dolphins just interacting with us for probably about an hour. So that was a pretty special, phenomenal thing. So in July of this year, I was fortunate enough to return to Churchill this time to see polar bears and beluga whales. So these are my beluga whale pictures. These are in the wild beluga whale pictures here. And this is a captive beluga whale, but I just like that picture. So it really talks about it. And if you could see this guy a little bit better, it would really look like this guy. So I think I had my GoPro in the water and I picked up a lot of really good vocalizations, not a lot of good underwater photography because the Churchill River is really yucky. So here is a rhesus dolphin. Again, Jane and I happen to be together on a whale watching trip with Dominic, and we had these guys actually come up and interact with the boat. They're normally a pretty shy species. And then we started to move the boat, and we had maybe about 10 of them that just started to create a chevron and just swim with us. And we must have done that. Yeah. And so it was so awesome that they just were like wanting to play. And so the rhesus dolphin, that's a pretty rare boat. My wife and I were in the Amazon in July of 2000. These are not my pictures. This is another case because this is kind of what we were doing right here. And the whales and the dolphins would surface like right there. But I was so impressed the fact that we actually saw these dolphins. I had to go online to get a couple of pictures of them to show you what I didn't take. But this is what Amazonian pink dolphins look like, and I think that was a very rare treat to be able to see, just be able to see that. Again, not my picture. Credit to Erica from Gone Whale Watching. That is without a doubt the best dude orca picture I think I've ever seen. False killer whale. I was talking to Erica on Christmas Day, and she had already posted that on social media. And I said, that was a phenomenal picture. And she goes, I was driving the boat and I took my camera and I looked to the right and I just snapped the picture. And they jump basically into the frame. I mean, she just goes that, if you try to capture that picture, that mom and baby in that, I mean, you could spend 10,000 slides trying to get that. I have seen pilot whales. I didn't like my pilot whale pictures, so I borrowed one from the internet. But that's just to tell you that I did see, I have seen pilot whales off of San Diego. I've also been out there whale watching when there's doll porpoise. Doll porpoise are black and white. Some people think they're little miniature orcas. There's all kinds of differences other than the fact that they're black and white. So you shouldn't make that confusion. But these guys are real speedsters. And so when they come toward you, there'll be a big rooster tail behind them. They look like speedboats coming at you. So there's a doll porpoise. Here on the left, we're watching a Turgiops with a baby. So the baby is here and mom is here. And so this is in Scammons Lagoon, San Ignacio Lagoon, my bad, sorry. San Ignacio Lagoon, and my family and I are watching this. These guys are trapped in a tide pool, but not a tide pool that you would normally think when I say tide pool. They were trapped but in a part of the lagoon. So they had to wait for the tides to come back in, but they had a really, really big area to swim in, but they were very curious. And so that was just almost within arm reach that they would come right by the shore and have a look at it. So that was one of my favorite. It's not a great picture of a bottlenose. I've got a lot of different pictures, but I like the story behind that one. If you do whale watch off of San Diego, at some point in time, you're probably going to see the lags. So that's in the upper right-hand corner. We got to see a lot of those. So there's one of my pictures. And then again, Delphinus, here's that stampede that's going on. All right. And let's see what else we get here. Come on. All right, so that's kind of the toothed whales. Let's go now to the baleen whales, the mysticetes. So blue whales off of San Diego. This has now become the new thing in June and July. I mean, these guys come, and this boat right here goes out and watches blue whales. All the different operators are out. Small dorsal fin way toward the back, massive animal. Wished I took drone photography because then you get a scale of the boat you're on when the whale's in the water, but I don't do that. So here are some of my blue whale pictures. And again, lots of those, but those are a couple of my favorites. Finback whales also appear in San Diego, more sporadically really, but they're around. And so you can see that the dorsal fin is bigger. It's a little farther forward. And so here's some pictures that I've taken of finback whales. And of course, the gray whales. So I got a whole bunch of pictures about gray whales and tell you some stories about gray whales. I was teaching a scuba diving class at La Jolla Shores in September. So if you know about gray whales, September is not a month that gray whales are in San Diego. There was nobody on the beach. It was a private class for a very well-to-do family. So it was just their family that I was teaching. They had all gone to see Jaws the night before. And so as we got dressed at La Jolla Shores to go for our checkout dive, they asked me a lot of questions about sharks. Have you ever seen a shark? Yeah, we looked at each other and thought we were both ugly, and we turned and went the other way. You know, whatever. And so we entered the water. There was really hardly anybody on the beach for La Jolla Shores in September. Howard Hall, who's gone on to become a pretty famous, not pretty famous, a famous cinematographer, was also from the same diving locker, teaching a class just down from me. And he had the same experience. And that's what's going on right here. Upper right-hand corner. I did my little exercises with my class. They cleared their mask. They did the regulator thing. They buddy breathed a little bit. They did all the little things that they're supposed to do. And then I told them I'd take them on a little tour into the top of the canyon so you could look into the underwater canyon just off of La Jolla Shores. When we got to the edge at about 40 feet of water and looked, and the water was pretty clear, you could see probably about 20, 25 feet, and something big was swimming just out of view. Just out of view. And I thought I could hear the music kick up. Dun, 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 dun. And as it emerged out of the muck and got a little closer, this is literally what you see on Marty Steiderman's picture. And that's why I borrowed this picture from, because that's what, you know, he's a photographer, I'm not. This whale, a juvenile gray whale, swam up to my class within 6 feet of me and looked at us with that eye, about the size of a dinner plate. Okay, and you could see the eye move. I turned around, I was so excited. I turned around to see how all my students were doing, and they were all in a perfect line right behind me. So they figured whatever the hell that was, it would take the instructor. We're paying him, and so he was going to be toast. So I have had a couple of underwater experiences like that with gray whales, but that was the first one and a very memorable one. So a traditional gray whale just hauling butt by. Here you get it in with a little breeze. You can see all the barnacles and the lice right here on the front end of that. Sometimes you get really close, so the explosive blow. They're now using drones to do what's called a snot bot, to fly over these whales to collect that sample. That's, I think, a really fun, cool thing. I spotted this gray whale in the upper right-hand corner, and you can see that it's a victim of a ship strike. So that, what I'm just circled, is a big chunk out of its back that didn't kill it, and it's all that orange are lice, whale lice, cyanid lice that are in there actually healing that whale. Okay, everybody gets ooey when we say lice, but this is a really good thing for gray whales. I saw that whale about a year or two later that was mostly filled in, but you could still see that little dent, and still alive. And here's just a whale exhaling under the water. That's just a lot of fun. A little zephyr. Again, some of my pictures, spy hop up here in the upper right-hand corner, just where they lift their eyes up out of the water, stand vertical. A breach happened to be happening at sunset, so I kind of like the lighting on that. And then this is one of about 40,000 pictures that I have of tail flukes, as I'm sure all of you do, right? And some of my tail flukes, when I first started to see gray whales, where they were like this, you know, and you kind of go, well, that's a great picture. I'm going to hold on to that, you know. And for some reason, I still can't quite get rid of those, even though you have better pictures. On two occasions, one off the Coronado Islands. This is just off the Coronado Islands here. We got into a group of gray whales that weren't moving very fast. So a lot of whitewater was happening. We chugged slowly over to them. We got over there. We saw there were 3 whales involved. You can kind of see this one headed in that direction if you look at the screen closely. And here is somebody underwater. All right. And there he is, not underwater. There he is, not underwater. Okay, gray whales are not all gray. And on one of our very first long-range whale watching trips, we had an 80-year-old lady that was with us, world traveled. She thought that was pretty cool. She came back and she said, "Rick, you can't believe what we just saw, a Pink Floyd." And so that actually has become the industrial word. Everybody calls it a Pink Floyd anymore. And I think she was the first one to coin it. So you do see them mating. If you don't know about gray whale mating behavior, their penis is prehensile, so they have quite an ability to maneuver it, and it's about 6 feet long. So what more could you say about that, right? Let's just move on. All right. Yeah. So after they impregnate the females, about a little over a year later, these females start going by San Diego, headed to the lagoons. Here we're in the lagoon, and we're watching this whale. And what I noticed on this whale in my skiff is that every time this whale was logging, just being at the surface, but all of a sudden there was just like this brownish material around that whale. I thought, oh, that's really interesting, because it wasn't brown anyplace else. And she went under the water, and when she came back up, she had the baby across her rostrum. So there is a not in focus, but a hell of a picture.
Yeah.
I think this is the Royal Polaris here, but I'm not sure. I can't remember what boat, but you can see how relatively close we are to the boat that we're staying on. So here she is holding the baby up, because they take a little while to get strength enough to keep themselves up to breathe air. We had read a lot about how dangerous mom gray whales can be protecting their babies. They read about scammons and all the skiffs that were caved in by that. She actually put that baby on our side and brought it over to us.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, holy mackerel. Again, I'm a biologist, I'm a wildlife enjoyer, and I'm also responsible for all the people on my boat. And I'm thinking, oh, this is pretty amazing. So I hope she doesn't capsize us. So there's the new baby being presented. We're very excited about that. And here's the little baby swimming with her on our side of her. She didn't put herself in between us. And you can see that the baby has scraped itself on mom's barnacles. You got a little torn skin right there. See, a little torn skin, but there's the eye. And then here's the out of focus, but here's that little piece of skin, and no barnacles, nothing, all nice and fresh. And we watched the baby nurse, well, as much as you could see it, and that was a pretty special event. So, and then the first time we went in with ACS, we went into Scammons Lagoon, and we thought an interaction like this would be pretty phenomenal. But the next year we went in to San Ignacio Lagoon, and that's when the whales started to become friendly. So I think the second or third trip, it might have been my third trip, where now all of a sudden the whales are becoming friendly. This actually is Hazel Sayers right here. I mentioned her name before, one of the founding moms of ACS San Diego. But here you see a gray whale swimming up close to the skiff in San Ignacio Lagoon, interacting. Pretty close, I guess you could say, right?
Yes.
This is my wife, Brenda, having a little pat there. And this is my other daughter, Nicole. This is my other daughter watching from Denver. This is my other daughter, Jody, and she's watching somebody pet the whale to the left. And this is her whale coming up. That's just going to be her private whale in just a minute. So it's swam up and it's turning around to come back, and she's going to be able to have that whale to play with. All right. And we were, you know, it's just, it's what people now just expect is going to happen. The trouble is that people expect this is going to happen. It's pretty rare, and these are massive animals. Things could go wrong in a real hurry if they decide they don't want to play that like this anymore. But I think people see this kind of photo and hear a presentation like this, and then they show up at Yellowstone thinking you could do this with buffalo.
Yeah.
All right, probably not a good idea. Don't pet the furry cows. All right. Now in SeaWorld captured 2 gray whales, and they had 1 gray whale, Gigi, and this was a research project by Dr. Kenny and Dr. Warren Brock from the medical school. Kenny was the SeaWorld person, and again, with Jerry, we used to do this kind of respiratory stuff all the time, and so somehow I didn't have a lot to do with this, but at some point in time, I got to be in the tank with them. This is not my picture. This is a picture off the newspaper. But we took the gas samples and analyzed the gas samples. I remember being involved in analyzing for their research project some of the stuff that they learned having this captive baby gray whale. So we got up and close. That's my view, but not my picture. Other baleen whales, humpbacks off the coast here again. You can see this off of San Diego. If you really want to see it, you want to go to Lahaina in Maui. And this was some pictures that we were there a year ago. So last year in February, so only 11 months ago, I took my whole family so they could experience all this with me. And you can see that we got some pretty good interactions with humpbacks traveling with the gone whale watching people. So here you see the pectoral fin under the water right there. Just a couple pictures. I have hundreds of pictures, so I just want to highlight. So here's my life list when it comes to whales. So I've checked the ones that I've seen. This is like a birder, right? You got your life list. So all of us cetacean nuts, you guys all got to have this poster, and you got to be putting little stickers on them. So I look at this sticker, and I know that I personally have interacted with 22 different species on that picture. You can also see that 22 is a pretty small number, and there's a lot of work still left to be done. So I'm not done whale watching and taking pictures of whales. Now, pinnipeds. Let me tell you some pinniped stories. Okay, I got to keep going here. Early in my career at the medical school, I think the first year I think the second year that I was there, I got invited by Dr. Just went blank. Bob, what's Bob's name? Elsner, Bob Elsner. Thanks, Jerry. Bob Elsner, to go with him on a research cruise aboard the Alpha Helix and go to the Bering Sea. And what we were going to do is to sample ice breeding harbor seals. So like the harbor seals that are in the children's pool, that's what we would see from the boat. You see there's actually a little baby. If you look really, really close, there's a little baby in front of the mom. And we would get off the boat, walk on water. I always tell that to my students. I walk on water, and plus I have the grade book. And we would capture them with a big net. We would take them back, tag them, make some measurements on them. Some of them we did some respiratory experiments on. And then when we were done, we let them go. So 6 weeks in the Bering Sea. This boat was commissioned by the National Science Foundation to work in all waters of the world. The marine engineers put the freshwater tanks against the aluminum hull. Yeah. I can just hear a couple of people understand what I'm saying. Most of you didn't get that joke. Freshwater freezes before saltwater. Aluminum conducts heat like crazy. We're sitting here in the ice, and the ice that we're walking on and the water below it is like 28 degrees Fahrenheit or about -2 or 3 degrees Celsius. If you fall in that ice, you got about 5 minutes to have somebody rescue your ass and get you warmed up. All right, or you're going to die. So that kind of made that trip sort of fun. but we were forced out of the ice because the fresh water froze or was in the process of freezing. So we would have to leave, we'd have to thaw out, thaw out in the Pribilof Islands, and then we came back in and continued our journey. So the second time we probed back up into the Bering Sea, this is what we were looking for in part. There's a baby that's pretty healthy little baby. And we would get those babies, tag them, put a flipper tag on them for Alaska Fish and Game. So this is one that's been tagged right there and released. But notice how fat that one is. So one day we're stopped working and we're at lunch. I walk out on the deck. I look out across the ice and I see a baby, an undersized baby. And I go, wow, there's a baby. But look at it, it's really in big trouble. So we were hoping mom would show up. And so we ate lunch and we dollied around for a while. We just kept an eye on this baby and mom never showed up. So I don't know whether I was stupid or kind-hearted, but I got off the ship, walked across the ice, and brought the baby back. This is a rescued, abandoned baby pup. And the chief scientist, Dr. Elsner, said, what the hell are you going to do with that? And I said, I think we should save it. And his wife was a physician, so he called home and he said, what are we going to feed this thing? And she said, a high-fat diet. We had frozen fish to feed the animals that we were collecting while we had them. So I made smoothies using vegetable oil. I used up 2 cruises worth of vegetable oil that had been put on the alpha helix. By the time I left, they had to go buy more vegetable oil in order to keep going. And this is what we did. Here I am, right here. And we would stomach tube this baby, Rasputin, and we would feed it. Now, notice how sunny it is. What time of day do you think it is? We're in Alaska. It's April. It's sunny. I got people to help me. How often does a baby have to be fed? Every 3 to 4 hours. Do you think anybody was around at 7 at night, at midnight, at 2 in the morning? Where were all my friends? I had to do this by myself. I had to tube the baby, making sure I wasn't in the lungs, and then pour my cocktail, my fish smoothie, making sure it didn't go in the lungs and kill them. And we ultimately brought back 3 adult harbor seals and this baby to Scripps. They flew home with us. The baby ultimately went, after we had it at Scripps for a while at SIO, it ultimately, I think it ended up in Oregon. But look at the difference between what he's holding in his lap and what the babies are supposed to look. Okay, so I had a lot of work, but I saved that baby, Rasputin. Yeah. Let's hear it from me. So here we're catching a seal and on the ice, and like I said, you had to run around, not fall in. Notice how we're not even wearing life jackets. I guess it doesn't make any difference because you fall in, you just die. So these are what harbor seals look like here in San Diego or on some of my Baja trips. They're earless, so you see that they don't have pinea, they don't have a little ear flap. They're unable to bring their hind flippers forward, so they just sit in this kind of cradle motion. They have to inchworm along to move on land. So anyway, a lot of you have the pictures of these harbor seals. And they are protected by the 1972 Marine Mammal Protection Act, which means people cannot go to the children's pool and try to get up close and have a picture with them. That's harassing them. So if you've been in La Jolla in the last couple of months, these guys are pupping at the moment at the children's pool, and it's a closed area. It's not allowed. The people are not allowed to go in there and swim. They've done the same thing in the La Jolla Cove area for the sea lions. On that trip to Alaska, I also saw a ribbon seal. So there's my ribbon seal. Pretty proud of that one. And I have on the islands, both in Coronado, down in the Baja, up in Año Nuevo, north part of Northern California. I've had a lot of interactions. So here's me having a conversation. Who's the more mature male? I moved out of the way when this one showed up. And this is what we call a wiener down here. This one's a little baby that's all fattened up. Here they are hanging out in groups. It's kind of a harem structure. Whoever has the best piece of property gets the ladies. You can't be a biologist without seemingly being a pervert. So there they are mating, because you got to take pictures of them reproducing. All right. So that's my earless seals, the harbor seal and the elephant seal. And then my eared seals, California sea lion. And this is the big sagittal crest that is on the head of the California sea lion males. Almost all of you have a picture of them at the bait dock. So as you motor out of here and go by, the drivers of these boats are always very kind to get us by, and you guys all have that picture. Here's a picture of them, I think, in a Baja Island, but again, not hard to get these pictures, but you can see how much different that they're able to bring their hind legs forward, and they have these really big front flippers. They fly through the water and they kind of crawl, so they can be a long ways away from the water. Now, again, back to Jerry. I was interested in doing a master's degree while I was working at the med school. We did a lot of stuff with Jerry down at Scripps. I liked the stuff he was doing better than the stuff that I was doing. And one day I was down there visiting him, and we had 2 California sea lions wash up together underneath the pier. And we went out, checked them out, and I don't know, Jerry, being the guy that he is, that's so brilliant, he said, "There's your master's thesis. Let's catch these sea lions. Let's get permission to keep them." He's certified to do that kind of stuff. And so I nursed, again, sea lions back to health first. The first night we put them in tanks that were behind the old aquarium. I left a ladder because it's about a 10-foot drop into the tank. I left a ladder so I could go up and down to feed them. And one of them, the next day I came in, and one of them was gone. I left the night before 2 sea lions in this tank, and the other one was gone, and we ultimately found it in the yard there. It had come up the ladder. So we talk about training these guys to do all these really interesting things. That's natural behavior. All we're doing is getting them to do it on command. And nobody trained that. But that was my job, is ultimately to take this sea lion. We had to build this little nose cone for it. So this is a drawing from my master's thesis. And we had to get this nose cone to fit on them. And I taught them to come up and ultimately stick their nose in there and blow as hard as they could. And that took about 3 weeks. They're very food motivated. This is not my pictures. I don't know, Jerry, if you have pictures but these are actually South American scientists doing the same thing, using our technique. But you see the sea lions are sticking their nose in there and they're blowing. But I didn't want them just to blow. They had to blow as hard as they could. So they had to really crank it out for me. And then the second part of my research was that there's a ring tank, a little circular tank at Scripps. And I got them to swim behind me as that cart moved around, and I got them doing this at different speeds. And so that was my first master's degree that I had. I've had the fortune just a couple of years ago to be in South Africa. So we saw Cape fur seals, South African fur seals. So these are my pictures of South African fur seals. Again, eared, you can see the ears there. They've got bigger front flippers. Here they are at Guadalupe. There's the big front flipper, mom and baby at Guadalupe Island. This is a baby at Guadalupe Island. And this is a photo that I thought I had, but I couldn't find it, so I stole it off the internet. So I have a picture like that, I just can't find it. And then to round out my pinniped collection, while we were in the Bering Sea on that first research expedition, I did see a walrus. This is my walrus picture. You want to look really close. You know, you got to really zero in. All right. These are not my pictures. All right. I borrowed these just to remind you what a walrus looks like. But I have seen my full set of phocids, Otariids, and now Otabenidae. So these are all the families of the seals. And then I thought, just for fun, and I got just a couple of minutes left, I thought we'd throw in a couple other shorter marine mammals. I think an evolving marine mammal, if it survives, is the polar bear. So these are all my pictures. I've been to Churchill twice. This is in the Churchill Zoo. They've got a great display of polar bears in their zoo. And this is a wild polar bear out that we're watching from the water. So, and Canada loves their polar bears, and so they even put it on their advertisement down here. We've also made a couple years before that, the three of us, Nicole, Brenda, and I, were up there at the wintertime in November, and they were just getting ready to go onto the ice. So we were surrounded by polar bears, and I just picked a couple of pictures that I like a lot. You see this polar bear pretty close by. Here you see one scooting. This is quite the behavior. They like to just sled along. And then you get one that was taking a nap in the weeds here and just shaking itself off. So those are all my polar bear pictures. I've had 2 occasions while I've been in Florida to interact with manatees. This is my bald head. This is not the manatee. That's me. These are 2 manatees. First time I did that, I went with a diving group that was going to go scuba diving. I just caught a ride with them and I snorkeled. Second time, the family went on one of our family trips, and we went out and did this again. Everybody got out of the water except me. The manatees were not really very friendly. I was in the water all by myself. I think this is Brenda taking a picture of me, and I just got lifted up out of the water. It was just as though a manatee came underneath my legs, and just I was saddled across the top of a manatee. And so this manatee that you see right here would run about that, probably about that long, if you could see underwater. Here's an underwater picture, sort of into the water. You can see them, and then not my picture, but certainly what I've seen is a mom and a baby. I think manatees are really cool. I think they're really cool animals, and I think they'd be really interesting to study. And one of Jerry's other graduate students has spent a lot of time doing that. And then kind of a last Jerry story and last marine mammal story. Jerry and I drove up to Monterey to go to a marine mammal conference. Jerry arranged for us to go to the Hopkins Marine Station. We were both certified Scripps divers. We took our stuff with us and we went out and we swam with the sea otters. So these are some of our similar sort of sea otter pictures. Again, not mine because I didn't have a camera that day. So I'm borrowing these pictures, but these are pictures that I've experienced. I've been up and close to sea otters, and they're pretty interesting little rascals as well. And not my picture, but in the Apple slide package, yeah, I was superimposing my picture over this all day long, and I said I'm going to include that as my final picture, because while I didn't take that picture, I've been in the Galapagos and snorkeled with these guys. These are the marine iguanas. And I think they'd be really interesting to spend more time and study as well, and how they're able to adapt to that. So I've had a wonderful experience this far in my life. I hope it doesn't end anytime soon. Lots of different experiences, and I'll be happy to take some questions if you have them. I have brought with me, just for the people on the boat, obviously, I have brought with me that book about the Baja Islands and my Squeaky From letter. If you wanna see if I'm telling you the truth or not, you can read Squeaky's letter, and we'll go ahead and turn the lights back on, and I'll get out of Keynote, and I will see what we have. If we have any questions, you're welcome to put.
Gigi, what year were you working with Gigi?
I would think Gigi was probably about, and I'm probably plus or minus 75. Is that Gigi 75, Jerry? I don't know. I think probably. I worked for John West at the medical school from 70 to 82, so 12 years. So I don't think it was. I mean, it might have been 77, 8. I'm not sure, right? But late 70s.
What year was it when you were diving off the shores with the gray whale that close?
God, I was hoping nobody'd ask me that. I was working, so it's while I was working at the med school. So it's between 70 and 82. We're narrowing it down.
That's okay. Oh, so, okay, so the
I would
70s,
probably say that happened to me in about 1976.
Okay.
Howard Hall, who again, as I mentioned his name, went on to become a really good cinematographer. I didn't realize he was teaching a class about 200 yards from me. I went running back to the diving locker. You can't believe what I just saw. And Howard is an underwater photographer. I'm not an underwater. He was packing up his stuff. That gray whale that we both saw at the shores, and he went out, and he and Marty Snyderman, we all worked at the diving locker as part-time jobs. Well, full-time for those guys. And he got some really, really good pictures. So that was pretty cool. All right, let me answer one on here. I will go back and forth. So let me.
Go back to Gigi, because at the same time Leanne was asking you, I was asking Anne.
Okay.
And so she just also mentioned that Ken Norris was involved in that.
Yes.
the Gigi
Oh.
project. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, all the respiratory stuff was done by Eric Warnbrock, who was an anesthesiologist at UCSD, a faculty member, and went on to become the dean for the medical school. And Jerry and I, do you remember this, Jerry? We flew down to Bahia de Los Angeles. The two of us co-piloted a private airplane, and Eric had driven down there with his boat, and he blew a tire on the way down there. And so Jerry and I were going, we didn't, he got a hold of us just before we left. We bought a tire, we put it in the back of the airplane. We had to clear customs in Mexico at Mexicali. Sound familiar? At Mexicali, we landed at Mexicali. They came out to inspect and they saw that tire in the back. Now, we should have said it was an extra tire for the plane, but we were both very honest and naive guys. And we said that it was a boat tire, and the guy said, you can't take that in there. He's going to have to drive to Cabo to get a tire. And Jerry and I are kind of naive, and we're looking at him like, oh, hell, what are we going to do? And finally it came on, and I just took a $20 bill, put it on the tire, and we were on our way. But that was a great weekend. If you know Baja, when Jerry and I did this, we landed on Main Street in Bahia de Los Angeles, and we taxied up.
Oh, no.
We taxied on Main Street up to Papa Fernandez's resort, and we parked our plane like a motel. And then 2 days later, we kind of played around at Guardian Angel Island, and then 2 days later, we flew out of there. So I've had a lot of interesting experiences with that young man in the back there. All right, so let's see. That was all stuff that they're not asking questions. Can you speak about the wind towers on the East Coast? Yeah, I got a lot of experience in that. That are killing whales and dolphins from the construction pounding. I cannot. Sorry, Jan, I cannot, because I don't know anything about it. And there's lots of times I would just make something up, but I'm not going to do that. So I don't know. I have no idea about that. So that's on the wrong coast. I'm on the right coast. No, I'm on the left coast. I'm on the left coast. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think that's my only question. All right. Other questions in the room here? Let me go.
Sorry.
That looked very well packed. It was so good. Look floppy. Did it look floppy?
Oh, yeah. When this thing was so new. I mean, it was we just watched delivery, if you could see underwater.
Yeah.
But it wasn't there when I pulled up, and I could see the red, the brown really, but it was really red. And then she submerged. She was gone for just a little while. Not a lot of footprints or anything, so we didn't think she was moving away from us. And she came back with that thing draped over her nose. This is what they do. They give birth and they capture it, take it to the surface. So that picture is minutes old.
Oh, that's amazing.
Minutes. And
I've
it
never
took,
seen that.
I mean, we stayed with that mom and calf for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. At the end of that 2 hour period, you could really see the young one starting to get strength that fast to start to actually now swim with it. So pretty fun little activity. You had a question.
Was that the Brazilian Amazon or Peruvian, or were the pinks?
That was the Brazilian. Yeah. We went out of Iquitos. Do you know the Amazon?
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
So we left out of Iquitos and we went downriver. First off, it was hard to talk my wife into going to the Amazon because she doesn't like creepy crawlies. And she made me promise that if she was going to go with me, I had to inspect the toilet every time she went to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And we're gone for weeks.
I'm bummed I didn't see you
And
when I
so
was there.
Iquitos, we went down the river, and at one point she was kind of falling asleep. We were just going fast down the river, and she said, "You're absolutely giddy." And when you get a biologist in their element, like, absolutely, I was giddy.
Yeah.
Every time I go out on a whale watching boat, I'm
Right.
giddy. Right, Dustin? Every time you drive this boat out, probably you're gonna be giddy, right?
course,
You're just gonna
yeah.
be giddy. I mean, it's awesome. So
So how many
Uh,
did you see?
we just saw, I think, 2 or 3, and it was pretty. It lasted maybe 5 minutes, and they were gone.
Oh, yeah.
So I mean, it was just fortuitous. But yeah, I didn't see them quite like that. I saw more in the lower right-hand corner picture with a, where they're just coming out. You know, they were pink
Right, a
dolphins.
little bit and they were,
Anything else I can answer?
oh, I got.
Back
one
to
more.
you, madam.
I've got one more.
Oh, one more.
That gal that sued ACS.
It was actually a guy.
Oh, it was a guy. Oh, gee, okay.
I think his first name was Dick.
Did he, yeah, he isn't. A big dick.
No, I
he-
didn't say that. I didn't say that because we're being recorded. I just remember he was not a very nice guy. So let's just call him Dick. Okay.
Did he
Richard?
contact, ACS first or did he just file?
We got
Sue.
served.
Seriously?
Yeah, we got served.
Like call and say, hey, I want he just went and sued.
You remember,
Right.
Brent? I don't
That-
remember. I think he just filed us. I think he just filed us. And then we, of course, had to take day off of work, go down to court,
Right.
worry about whether, we're gonna get thrown in jail or whatever. Yeah, so all good. Are there any other questions? Thank you for sharing my life with me and how fun, some of the fun things. You wanna close this up? I'll leave it run.
Okay. Thank you so much. I like hearing about just the history of ACS and how, people have this common interest and come together. And then some people, are experts in the field and researched, all of this. And then like me, just somebody who kind of fell into it and fell in love with the animals and then, has learned so much more from the people that started all of this and from the people that come and have joined the meetings. I want to return to Thomas Jefferson again. That presentation is going to be February 21st, and he's going to talk about the disappearance of the blackfish, I think is what he's called it. And it's about how San Diego used to have a lot of pilot whales, and they've kind of moved away from the area. And then oh shoot, he's got lots to share with us. So that'll be our next presentation. And we'll be posting more about the presentation on our website. And again, that's acssandiego.org. Thank you all for joining us and have a great evening.
Thank you.
We're going to stay here.
Do that on board.
uh,
I'll turn off the recording. Thank you all for joining us. We will shut off the recording.